It's Sunday and I was going to talk about what's coming up next week, but screw that. Let's talk about Luke Cage. Time for another Comics and Coffee. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is Comics and Coffee, where I do an unedited show just talking to you in the camera. So normally what I do is I go over the upcoming projects this week, and to be perfectly honest with you, I'm doing my research now, so there's a ton of stuff that I'm working on. Plus, I'm hoping to do a little bit of a preview next week of something that I want to roll out on a little bit larger scale. So definitely keep your eyes out for that. Also, I want to say thanks to all the subscribers again this week. It's awesome seeing the channel grow, and I appreciate the feedback that I get from everybody regarding anything that I'm putting out. But to be honest, let's talk about the big thing that's on everybody's mind right now, and that is definitely Netflix's Luke Cage. So myself, I'm that person that's, like, hey, you've got a Netflix account, why don't you just let me log into it? So I don't have it on my own, but I do have a friend that's lovely enough to let me use her login, so that's awesome. So last night was the first chance that I really had to sit down and watch Luke Cage, and I have to say that this reminds me a lot of Daredevil Season 1. So the reason that it reminds me of Daredevil's... more coffee. The reason that it reminds me of Daredevil Season 1 is simply because it takes a little while for it to get going. The first episode isn't really something that's going to go out and grab you, even though it does do a pretty okay job of introducing the character, the setting, and all the backstory that's going to be going on for the rest of the season. It picks up a little bit in, episode 2, but episode 3 is where things really start hitting, where Luke Cage he basically accepts what he is and what he has to do, which is awesome. It results in probably one of the best scenes in the series so far, and if you know what I'm talking about, Fort Knox goes down hard. And it's not so much about Luke Cage being a bad guy, it's being the best guy that he can while still breaking the rules a little bit. That's part of being a vigilante, distributing that kind of justice. And I have to say that the Cottonmouth character, Mr. Stokes, as he prefers to be called, is just menacing. But you kind of have to wonder where Black Mariah is gonna, where she is going to be coming from. It is absolutely ridiculous, the kind of duality that they present. She's the face, she's the front, she is the public persona, whereas he is the blackness behind the scenes, the dark entity that's kind of guiding these things, and that's awesome. I can't wait to see the rest of it, because I feel like it's going to be a very strong kind of presentation, and ultimately Marvel's probably going to be doing a really good job releasing their next book, because you've got the Cage comic that's coming out this coming week, which is going to kind of piggyback on the success, critical or not, of Luke Cage as a series and how it integrates into that Netflix Marvel universe. So they definitely timed things pretty well when it came to those characters releasing and trying to get people into the comic books themselves. If you're going to be reading a Cage comic book, I definitely recommend going to Power Man and Iron Fist, written by David Walker right now. That is a great book that is going to be a good introduction into the character without having to go dig through a ton of backstory. Plus, there's a bunch of stuff that was on Comixology this past week that was free, so definitely check that out too. Once we get past Netflix, we're going to have to start talking about Doctor Strange. A couple really awesome trailers have been dropping. And what I was going to do is I was originally going to do a video about how Marvel was explaining magic inside the movie universe. Because inside that little outtakes video that you saw at the end of Civil War II, that whole gag reel that they released on YouTube and on their website, you saw Vision trying to explain how Wanda manipulates molecules at a subatomic level, that kind of thing. They were going to try and put a scientific spin on it. But ultimately, beyond that being a just really difficult scene to shoot, it's something that they pulled out of the actual movie itself. They didn't want to have that kind of explanation in there simply because Doctor Strange was coming, and they were going to explain it in a much more comprehensive way. Magic is being represented mystically, which is awesome. The line that Wong has in the trailer, where it's just like the Avengers deal with more worldly kind of events, where we deal in the more mystical, that is just like, oh, yeah, I like where this is going, and it's going to give you a sense of scale. Not only are the Avengers more of like a worldly kind of event team, Doctor Strange is a dimensional, like, I am protecting not only you and me on this planet, but also all the entities inside this very dimension from those other threats. And that's just awesome. I like the visuals regarding the way magic is presented, those floating kind of glyphs. I'm interested to see what the real specific explanation for magic is, because there's a few different leaked pieces where they talk about things like, chakras and pressure points and how all these different interpretations over history have been kind of like trying to understand the same fact about magic and energy. And what we're probably going to see is a determination. I haven't read a whole lot of spoilery stuff because I want to be very surprised for this kind of movie, but my interpretation is that they're going to be channeling energy that's known inside of our own dimension and from other dimensions and utilizing that to practice the mystic arts. So you have to have some sort of concentration, very much in like a Tai Chi martial arts kind of situation where all I can think of is, Dragon Ball Z, Goku, Spirit Bomb kind of stuff, where he's calling on the plants of the world and stuff like that to build up this giant thing over like 9 episodes, and it was terrible. But soft plot, there's a soft spot in my heart for Dragon Ball Z of that era. It was something special. But I think that's really where Doctor Strange is going to be going with that magical aspect. And if there's any kind of success, this last trailer was a blow me away kind of trailer. If it doesn't get you amped for Doctor Strange, well, it's really not a film for you. And I'm curious to see how the Marvel fan base and people in general react to that kind of movie, because Marvel's really a stamp of approval at this point in time. So I feel like people need to go to that particular movie to understand where that movie's coming from, and they can't really get it from the trailer without being too spoilery. So that's definitely something over the next month to watch out for and see what kind of projections and reactions are going to be going on. To finish off with, probably the last thing that I want to touch on is that Marvel Now 2.0 is officially starting. Yay! Like, there are some books that I'm really excited for in Marvel Now 2.0. Some of them might just be fan service kind of books like Renew Your Vows. Some of them might be other kind of books which are continuations like Ultimate Squared, which is a great book by Al Ewing. And other ones are going to be newer, fresher teams that are based around younger characters like Champions. So those are books that I'm really looking forward to. And there's a lot of kind of like pushback right now simply because Civil War II is such a poor execution of event. It's just not really something that people can get behind, and you're seeing that with a lot of the hardcore comic book fans. A lot of the people that are on YouTube in pretty prominent places, they're just like, oh my god, this is absolute trash. And they're not wrong. It's a very forced event, and the fact that it's still delayed and it's going to go until December or sometime around then is really just a testament to how poor the planning was and how forced in the story was itself. It was really a terrible marketing move at this point in time, and it could have been a very compelling story at some point in time if they'd had a little bit more time to develop it, but it's just kind of counterintuitive. It's counterproductive what they're really doing, because they're taking a lot of the shine off of their new books that they didn't really need to make. You want to introduce new book. You take all the old ones out, cancel them, introduce a new book. That's all you really need to do. Just concentrate on telling good stories. And this is just putting emphasis on the fact that in order to market this giant event and try and take advantage of a very successful film, they are creating large breaks in actual story production and kind of negating all the goodwill that those stories had brought up to begin with. So everything about the Civil War II tie-ins, other than dedicated Civil War II specific books, things that were designed specifically to work in Civil War II, has been relatively poor, even though it's explaining the same story in multiple different facets, and it's a pretty lame attempt, and it's not really all that productive in that respect. So I'm a big Marvel fan. I like DC. I'm reading more DC than I am Marvel now because they have kind of drawn my attention away from those particular books because of what's involved with Civil War II and how frustrated I am with that event, the timing, the storyline, and how forced it is into the Marvel landscape. So that's me bitching about Civil War II, which I've pretty much done in every video since over the last month. It's not good. I'm not really a fan. So that's what I'm going to do. Basically, after this, I'm going to go get my hair cut. I'm going to start shooting videos. I've got to work for another couple hours today, but hopefully I'm going to get everything produced out, so including that teaser content that I'm going to be dropping next Sunday. So that's it for this week's Comics and Coffee. As always, if you like what you see, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book TV shows, comic book games, and anything and everything having to do with the world of comics.